Hey everyone, Dr. Pedram Shojai here with Dr. Sarah Gottfried at the Health Bridge. Hi Sarah.
Hi Pedram. Hi everybody.
Hey, so we have one of our good buddies joining us today. Homeboy by the traditional definition, because I've been spending a lot of time with him lately, and we all don't see him enough because he is a gypsy nowadays and has been traveling the country and the world. The famous and delightful Abel James. Welcome to the show, Abel.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
Hey, so for those of you who don't know Abel, he's done everything. He is, he's been the #1 health podcaster well before Sarah and I even realized what a podcast was. He was a consultant to all kinds of companies and realized that they were messing around, and he got in and started telling the truth, and he hasn't been able to stop ever since. He's got a delightful sense of humor, and he's been experimenting on his new cookbook for several weeks, of which I got to be a part at my house. So man, they fed me well. It's been a lot of fun, and I feel like I'm part and privy to the making of this thing, because I got to taste all the delicious recipes, and so I can't wait for you to tell us all about that. But first and foremost, hello man, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. It's been funny because you guys both know that I've been pretty much off the grid, and Allison has been too, for like the past 6+ months. And I realized it's awesome. We got this place to do some cooking videos and interviews for my show again, and then for shows like yours. And thanks again for having me on. But I realized that I don't really talk to people unless I have shows like this. So in order to even see you guys, we need to keep doing shows, because it's awesome to catch up, and we just never do it. We're all way too busy. It's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we have something to learn from you about being off the grid. That sounds kind of amazing.
It's really, it's incredible, because we weren't off the grid before that. We were very busy kind of building up our own presence in the online world, doing music stuff, recording videos, and just, being normal, busy people, responding to too many emails and text messages and phone calls. And it was just getting so big, which was a blessing, but also kind of a curse, right? When you're especially an entrepreneur, or you're new in business or something, and your career is going really well, all of a sudden it can kind of get away from you. So in June of last year, we decided to sell basically everything that we had, including my house and the cars, and we unloaded almost all of our stuff, and just have been living free of technology for a while. Now we're kind of like hooking back in, but we declared, technology bankruptcy, essentially. We got rid of all of our tech, and at some point, someone else, it's not my idea. Someone else told me that about emails, because they kind of explained that that's what I did. It gets to this point where there's just no way you could ever respond to the backlog in your inbox. And so you send a note to everyone, you declare email bankruptcy, and you say, I'm so sorry. Like, it just got out of hand. I'm starting fresh tomorrow, so we'll go from there. And that's kind of what we did with our whole, tech life. And it's been really cool, because we came back from the woods, and now we're living in Star Trek. I mean, it's the gadgets that we have today are insane. It's awesome. Drones, Pedram.
Yeah, we got drones.
Oh my gosh. Abel, I love how, it's kind of like when you say no to someone, you're saying yes to yourself. When you declare technology bankruptcy, it's as if you're declaring time wealth for yourself. Mm. So I really like that. I really like that.
It took us a long time to get there, but eventually, especially today, it's like you wake up in the morning, and then you do your morning thing. Actually, thanks to Pedram, I've been doing Qigong every morning for many months, probably coming up on a year now, and it's been a total life changer. But you do that, and then, I kind of write in my journal a little bit, maybe play some music, and then it's 9, 10, 11 a.m., and I'm like, what should I do now? And that's like the first time I felt like that in years. And I think it's something we used to kind of experience a lot of at the end of the night, or maybe early in the morning, or at some point in the day. You just have a few minutes to yourself, and kind of you collect yourself. It's almost like an active meditation, right? Where you could be, maybe I'll go fishing with my dad or something like that. People don't, a generation or two ago, we all had that or at least some of that. And now it seems like none of us do. So you have to kind of like make this effort to insert it into your own life.
That's huge, because that's where I think a lot of the people in our worlds are panicking, right? They're time poor, they're so time compressed. And it's just like, I don't have time for my loved ones, my kids, my family, my dog. I mean, it's just this train of guilt that's constantly there in our modern world because you're overcommitted. And for you, you just kind of put your foot on on all of it and was just like, no, enough. I want my quality of life back. I want to enjoy my time with Allison and you know, really be the person I need to be for my fan base. Because for me to crash means that my message is no longer relevant. And so I thought it was a really bold and powerful way that you just took ownership of that. And you look great. I mean, you know, you're Captain America.
Well, it's really interesting because I know there are, you know, my supportive friends who are awesome and are always awesome like you guys. And then there are other people who are like, I can't believe you stopped your show. Why would you do that? It was popular. And then the same thing happened when I quit consulting. It was just like, why would you do that? You're going to be VP by 26 and blah, blah, blah. And that's happened at enough points in my life where I've learned to suck it up. It's never easy. You know, it's really not, especially when you choose to stick out like that, because other people really don't like it when all of a sudden you're, you know, in Bali not returning their emails about whatever. Right. But man, I think we all kind of need to do that every once in a while is have that time, because when you're with someone and there's nothing blooping at you or bleeping at you or demanding your attention, you can truly be with them, or truly be with yourself and really confront some things and go through whatever. And so it's always been really important to me, not just as an artist, because that is really important, but more as a person, to take some time every so often and just go, especially in nature. You know, Pedram, we've done that together many times, and it doesn't matter what you're walking in there with. It's when you're walking out, you're pretty much a new person.
This is so good. You know, Abel, I just want to honor you for making this courageous choice. I feel like you're talking about that internal dialogue that many of us have, you know, sort of the choice to go off the grid versus that fear-based voice that says, what do you mean you're going to give up consulting? What do you mean you're going to give up your #1 podcast on iTunes?
Yeah.
And I can feel this shift happening for me just as you talk of, you know, looking at my iPhone. My sister in Portland just looked at my iPhone a couple weeks ago and she said, Sarah, you have 28,000 messages in your inbox. And I can feel this shift happening where I'm just like, so what? So what? Like, I'm going to walk away from it.
Yeah.
Done. I'm bankruptcy.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And Sarah, look, you are right now where I was at the end of the year. I mean, you're in a book launch. I was in a movie launch, and you have these phases in life, right? Where it's like, okay, you got to march faster, but then what do you do after that? Like, how do you catch your breath so that you can be there and restore and rejuvenate? And I think that that's something that's lost in our realm of perpetual deadlines, and all the things. I mean, you come from consulting, Abel. I just consulted with a company that is a tech company, and it's like, it seems like they have a new product launch and a new innovation. Like, it used to be every quarter, then it became every month. Now it's like every 12 hours they have something they got to launch, and it's just like bam, 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 and it's like it's not sustainable. So like, what, obviously you worked hard and you put away a couple bucks so you could take off for a little bit. But so how does someone who's listening to this do this in their life without leave? Not everyone's going to be able to sell their house and put the dogs in a kennel or whatever it is to do what you did. So what's your practical advice to people who want a piece of that?
In terms of being practical, I'll start there, but then I'll give a slight warning, because that's another piece of my story. But being practical about it is really, I like to have people, because this is what I do with myself, and this is what has always worked. Just take something that you know will be good for you, that you don't usually do, that you could do every day, that takes like 2 to 5 minutes. Write it down and then just do it tomorrow, and then do it the day after that. And if you miss a day every once in a while, that's okay. Just don't let the habits kind of go away. You want to build this habit, whatever it is. And once you do that, say it's meditation or a walk with your dog, or just a little bit of time in the sun, or a few deep breaths, whatever it is. Do that every day. And everyone has 2 minutes. It doesn't matter what amount of time you have or what you're up against. Take that 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is. And eventually, like for me, after doing that for many years and kind of massaging whatever I have in my morning routine, a lot of times I'll give myself a whole hour at that point. And a lot of people say, well, I don't have an hour. It took me years to work up to that. And also, I've kind of aligned my lifestyle. So secretly, the things that make what we do work or make us look good or whatever, me and Allison, are the really boring things. Like, Pedram, when you see me, I might have my party pants on or something like that and just hanging out all night. But the truth is that almost every other night I'm passing out at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock and waking up at like 5 or 6, fully rested and just rocking it all morning. And that's the stuff that a lot of people don't want to hear. But like, if someone else is doing better than you, feeling better than you, looking better than you, it's usually because they're sleeping more. So sleep more and then build this little morning thing and make that totally yours, because that's the difference between, living somebody else's life and living your own.
Yeah, Abel and I just spent a better part of a week in the mountains skiing with some friends, and good, healthy daytime activities. And it was hard for me having a baby.
And unhealthy nighttime activities.
And unhealthy nighttime activities. And like,
I have no doubt.
Oh my God. I kept wanting to tap out. And then you got, like this group of guys that are like, don't be a bitch. Right. And it's just like, I'm so sleepy. It's hard to do both. It really is.
It is. Well,
Pedram, you were like the center of every party. Can we just be honest about that? I mean, really?
Well, when the center is bitching about going to sleep, it makes it even worse.
That's true. But to get back to the warning that I was going to give to some people about, all of your stuff kind of accumulating and living this life or whatever. What happened to me, and one of the reasons it was so easy, relatively easy to kind of unload everything again and reinvent myself or whatever, is 5 years before that, when I first moved to Austin after consulting in DC, all I wanted to do was take a road trip and see America and like live in the woods for a while, because I couldn't do that after graduating because of my loans or whatever. So this bitter consultant goes out there, drives, downsizes everything and drives everything that I have left, all my instruments, notebooks, the album I was working on, everything else, into this dinky little apartment in Austin. And I came home one night and it was in a 30-foot wall of flames, and we lost everything. So I kind of lost everything, not by choice the first time, and experience like what that felt like from the inside out, and the crisis of identity that happens to anyone who's been through something like that, a car accident or a brain injury, or if you're an athlete, some other kind of injury, or just losing your job or anything like that. Sometimes life does it to you. So when you do front load your own little thing, whatever that thing might be, it kind of protects you against whatever the winds are, the things that are trying to blow you off your roost. You can take them because you kind of put yourself on these pillars in the morning, these pillars of strength, and then you just live your life on your own terms instead of being blown around by the wind.
This is so good. You're modest, and I want to call out a couple of things that I heard between the lines there, Abel. So one thing, make sure I get this right, okay? So you did high school and college at Dartmouth in 6 years, right?
I did, yeah. And then I wanted to stay for 4 at Dartmouth because it's so much fun there. And so I did a senior fellowship, which was totally cool because I studied like psychology and brain science, but then combined it with the world of music. And that's where my first like research of my first book came from, which is The Musical Brain, and kind of looking at how music is its own language and how the brains of musicians are fundamentally different if you have that sort of training. And so I totally, I'm a geek, but I wanted to get out of there. It's fair enough. Like, some of my genius is a survival mechanism because, truth be told, I had to drop out of almost every school I was in because of money. So a lot of it really was trying to get by as quickly as I could because I had to,
But didn't you also pay off all of your student loans within a short amount of time? I mean, I just turned 48 and I just wrote the last check for my med school loans.
Nice.
Like, it's ridiculous. No, but you're like so much younger than I am and you paid it off so fast. I just want to like call that out before we get to the wild diet, which I'm super excited about.
I'm not a Harvard MD though. You have to give yourself some credit, my Sarah.
Yeah, it's expensive,
boy.
but you did it, and I think the undercurrent of that is you didn't want to be in debt. You didn't like how you felt under debt, and that's pretty much the Western world is like everyone's crunched under debt and time, and you have found a way out.
It was so bizarre. My entire world changed. It's like sometimes you open your eyes and then they adjust a little bit. If everything's 50% brighter, it really felt like that. And when because I'd been broke my whole life, and my parents had been broke too, and everyone was broke where I came from. And then all of a sudden I was, for the first time, like I didn't have negative money. I was like happily broke, but without any attachments. And so that's why I got this, 1985 Mercedes diesel that I converted to run on vegetable oil and drove it all around the country, just goofing off for a few months because I could. That's what freedom is, right? Isn't that what we're all kind of working toward anyway? It's just, for a lot of people, especially the well-groomed ones who I went to school with, who graduated, they went straight. I went straight to my jobs because of money. I had to, kind of, because of debt. Other people just went straight to their jobs. And then, a popular thing that would happen in consulting is people would switch, right? They'd go from one good job to another really good job. And I'd be like, so how much time are you taking in between? Are you going to go to Spain and hang out, or like do something else that you've always wanted to do? You have plenty of money in the bank. And they're like, no, I got to get started with this next thing. There's this project and I got to get ahead, But the people who continue to do that, in my opinion, don't get ahead. They get to be where a lot of us find ourselves. Like Sarah with your launch, I was just there too. I mean, if you guys saw me before that, like if we roll back to last like April, May, I was a totally different person in a lot of ways. I was not drinking, not partying, being very specific about my schedule, writing all the time, working all the time. And it's nice to have those cycles. But as Westerners, I think a lot of us don't give ourselves those cycles. You go to Europe and people take, 40 days off. You have to, or whatever, 3 months. We need to build that back in.
Yeah, but that's part of the American thing, right? We had a conversation with some people in the medical industry, and he was talking about like medicine being like a plantation system, and how the doctors are just stuck having to like turn over and do all this stuff. And it seems like the debt slavery, the wage slavery, and all these types of things that are built in is, either you get yourself out of it in the American dream and actually have freedom, or you just have to buy a nicer Mercedes and keep up with the Joneses, which is where, I think you kind of realized that you could jump out and get the actual freedom, which is freedom of time, right? So that you can do what you wish with your time.
Right, yeah. Freedom of time, and also it's, I think a lot of us, it's hard for us to understand the world that we actually live in now, where you can work remotely, or a lot of people can work remotely in jobs where that's just was not even close to an option 5, 10, certainly 20 years ago. And so I think when you unplug like we did for a while and you come back, you're really even more encouraged to be like, wow, internet is actually better in Bali. Like working over there, writing over there actually kind of makes sense if you want to do certain things, or kind of having this, instead of saving all of this vacation for when you're sick and old and too tired to kind of do the things that you love to do when you were active and young. I mean, why don't you sprinkle that in and actually make it a part of productive work? Like I do some of my best work when I'm in the woods, not talking to anybody. It's a different kind of work than the interviews that I'm doing right now. But I mean, like if you want to write a book, or if you want to do that thing, that learn how to play a guitar, whatever, sometimes it's better to go camping and just bring your book, or bring your fiddle or whatever it is, and take away all the other options and distractions, because there's something about just kind of like being with yourself that a lot of people aren't used to. But it's strong medicine, as you guys know well.
Well, I want to talk about your book, because I'm in the prep phase for a couple of the recipes that you have in here. Nice. And I feel like some of the things that you talk about in the Wild Diet are related to this conversation.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
right?
more, it's a philosophy, really. It's, no one needs another diet book. So I tried not to write one. It's mostly just like memoirs that encapsulate a cookbook. So it tells people about how health actually can be really simple, through stories and through kind of symbology and metaphors and an argument, really, that gets to, we should all be following the advice that we were following, 100 years ago, where you eat fresh food, and everyone just knows that. Vegetables are good for you, sugar's bad. We've known this stuff for a really, really long time. It's just a matter of like, what are you building into your habits? And so I wanted this to be a very much like mindset-based book, because that's where I'm all about anyway, just, bouncing around up here with crazy ideas. I don't think that it always serves people to be dogmatic, especially in an instrument like a book, because it's not really a conversation. It's more of like an argument, right? And so that's actually why we're doing some cooking classes right now. We're trying to do, like, one of the gifts of technology is that it allows people to communicate with you. Like, this is a communication. People are not only listening, but commenting on this video. You know what I mean? That's such an opportunity to make cool stuff. So we're trying to, in addition to the book, see how we can use the book to blow that up even more. Have it be a whole community-based thing, because that's one of the good things about the internet. Like, tech isn't all bad. You know, we develop apps and stuff like that. We really like the promises of technology, but it's a double-edged sword, that's for sure.
I'm gonna share a personal story I have with Abel and Allison. You guys were with us for a fair amount of time at my house and baking and cooking and all this, and you guys, I grew up a Persian prince. Like, I just didn't, like I was of that culture. Kind of like Italians have the same thing where it's like, oh no, honey, I got it. Let me do this. So my mom didn't really let me cook or do anything, and it was like, you go do your homework. It was really disempowering. I had to learn how to cook, after college.
Right.
And we had a conversation about pumpkin pie. I said, that's my kryptonite. I love pumpkin pie. And you guys worked with me on a pumpkin pie recipe, right? And said, well, let's figure out how to make pumpkin pie not be bad for you. So, we took out the gluten, we took out the dairy. I'm not good with chicken eggs. We put in duck eggs. And we started messing around and making healthy versions of pumpkin pie with delicious substitutes and alternatives. And then, we got into baking herbs into the crust and all sorts of really cool stuff. But it was this weird metamorphosis and judo flip, because it was a guilt food for me that I would, use, once in a while as like a treat. And then suddenly it became a healthy, medicinal, robust food that I didn't have to trip out on. And it was this weird thing that I had to kind of wrestle with in my psyche to transform food into something that was pleasure again. And I want to thank you for that. It was a powerful thing. I've made like 6 pumpkin pies since then.
That's so awesome. And that's such a great thing to share, Pedram, because that's how it all starts. Is you don't go, it's so intimidating as someone who's not a cook to like flip the channels on the TV and see all of these incredible celebrity chefs that are making these elaborate things that are not only delicious but beautiful and perfectly fresh and perfectly seasoned. You can't compete against that, especially if you don't know how to cook or if you don't have much time. But everyone can scramble an egg or, like massage some kale or make a green smoothie or do whatever it is for yourself or for your family. That's just kind of that really quick win. That's a meal for you. So at the beginning, like, you can even, one of the recipes in the book is pancakes, but these pancakes are actually made of egg, a little bit of coconut milk or coconut fat, and then a little bit of coconut flour, and then a little bit of baking soda so it rises. And they're pretty much eggs, right? But they taste like pancakes. And similar with pumpkin pie, or it was actually my mom's recipe for red velvet cupcakes that she learned. It used to come from, like, the color used to come from beets, not crushed beetles or artificial chemical colors from the Second World War. It used to actually come from real food. And so we've tried to sneak real food into like every recipe we have for everything from cupcakes to cookies to, we even experiment with pizzas and other food, like comfort foods that you can eat as real food again, that you don't have to feel bad about or feel like you're robbing yourself of something. Food, we need to get back to pleasure. That's how it will heal us, I think.
I agree with that, Abel. And one thing I really like in your book is the 90-10 rule. Most of us are familiar with the 80-20 rule. Can you explain what you mean by the 90-10?
So the 90-10 is actually one that we talked about in consulting a lot because it applies to business stuff just as much. So 80-20 basically means that you get the biggest bang of your buck by looking at like the biggest thing and ignoring all of the details of the 20% in a lot of cases. And so when you're looking at every day of your life or every meal that you're eating, I am certainly not perfect, and I'm proud of that, because what you really want is diversity and pleasure in the foods that you eat. You want to look for the perfect foods that you might not have tried before. You know, like I could do without eating bugs in Thailand again, but at least I tried them, and I'll never on my deathbed regret that, right? You know, although the cricket bars are pretty good. They're not too bad. We can eat some bugs. But when you kind of look to diversify your inputs of food, when you're looking for the weirdest vegetable you can find in some crazy Asian market or something like that, you allow yourself for it not to be organic or not to be coming from the perfect organic little farm. You make some small sacrifices in the face of hopefully doing greater good, which is having fun with this and enjoying it. But I can tell you, you know, if you're talking about pumpkin pie or something like that, there are certain places where you can, you know, misplace your efforts and other places where you should really put them. And there is a fundamentally different thing about a pumpkin pie that you make as a family or as friends or even by yourself and you eat it together. It is a different thing than just picking one up at Costco and eating something that kind of tastes like pumpkin pie. So getting back to that, putting your intentionality into your food, your love into your food, it's an opportunity to be a huge gift to the people you love the most. That's really what cooking is. And a lot of us are not trained to see it that way as Americans. And it's unfortunate because that's really, even if you just, like my dad did before we went to school, scrambled us some eggs and put it on some toast, you know, doing that for your kids means a lot. And doing that for people you love is such a awesome opportunity.
That's a big thing, and you know, we've been talking about maybe taking our families to Europe and you know, kind of shacking up for a couple months and you know, running our shows. I mean, there's internet in Europe, it turns out,
right.
and doing that, because one of the things Europe has still hung on to is this love of the ritual of eating and this love of food, and that's a story that I think needs to come back. There's so much guilt in America with how we eat, and you know, the ingredients have obviously, you know, created all sorts of problems, and that's a big part of your book, is talking about just getting back to wild, you know, foods, wild ingredients. But the honor and the amount of respect that there is for mealtime is something that I see you kind of bringing back with what you're talking about in the book. So it's not a cookbook, it's like a philosophy book with awesome recipes.
Right.
It's weird. It's like you.
So
it's just
weird.
it's hard to peg, right?
Exactly. Yeah, but you're so right about that. And I think one of the things I'm very happy to have experienced growing up and still do, I come from a family, like I think I said on my dad's side, they're all dairy farmers, big family. My dad's one of 7. And so for pretty much every holiday and some just special occasions, we would have enormous feasts. And as part of those feasts, you know, it was always something that was very reverent, you know, like Uncle Dean grew the mushrooms, or a lot of times the turkey that would eat would be heritage. It would come from like my brother's farm or something like that. You know, like there was a story and a lore that came with all of this food. And, you know, Nan's blueberry salad recipe, she picked all of the blueberries every year and canned everything that she couldn't use right away and made this salad that she'd been making for decades. You know, that it just goes back in the family. When you experience that and compare it to going to like Buca de Beppo or something like that, right? And when you go to this chain restaurant, unfortunately, that's what most people are up against, and that's what their comfort is. When you grow up in suburbia, a lot of the generation today, you know, it's like you don't get what we were so fortunate to get growing up. And Allison, you know, comes from a big Mormon family. She's one of 7. And so like similar thing over there. When you have a big feast, you're also playing in the pool, or you're having soccer games and football games. You're being active. It's a very like holistic thing. And I think we're really missing out on a lot of that. So I try to impregnate my book with a lot of those stories that are just like, this is what it can be like to eat dinner when you're in Italy and it takes 5 hours and you drink as much wine as you want. And basically the conversations that you have make your whole week. You know, it's a different way of viewing mealtime, and I think it's one that can really help us.
Oh, that's good. I got a little distracted when you said impregnate, but let me go back to...
Is there something you're telling us?
So Pedro, we were talking about this guilt that we have here in the U.S. about eating, and I agree with you that I feel like Abel is onto something so important. Abel, you are onto something so important here about kind of reclaiming our connection to food. And I think it goes even deeper than guilt. I would say it goes to the realm of pathological dieting.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? Do you agree?
It's encouraged by the system. It's encouraged by your own friends. It's encouraged by your family in a lot of cases. I think they want what's best for you, but that's just such a damaging way of doing it.
That's true. I mean, we've gone out to dinner with some of our health friends, and I just think it's important to kind of realize, like, when we go out to dinner, we've got like the people who are saying, okay, I can't have dairy, I can't have gluten, I can't have any grains at all, I can't have any legumes, and where's your meat from? I think the 90-10 rule is something that really applies, and it's almost like this a way of cutting through the guilt, the pathological dieting, the kind of the lack of focus on the right things when it comes to food.
Give yourself a break. Like everyone makes the occasional misstep, but reward yourself for having that green smoothie, not with more junk food, right? Like you don't reward yourself with food from food. That's one thing that you definitely want to get away from. But every food that you eat should have something of value in it. And we need to get away from thinking, oh, this doesn't have carbs in it, or this doesn't have many calories, or it doesn't have fat, or it doesn't have this artificial thing, or it's a non-GMO or whatever. You don't need to eat non-food. This is the first time in history that we're trying to get less food in our food. It's ridiculous in a lot of ways to even read the marketing messages that we're getting. What you want is to find, say, the best high-quality organic coconut oil you can, and get a jar of that for $10 or whatever. It'll last you months, and use it in your smoothies, in your coffee, to grease your skillet, and just know that it's good for you when you're doing that. You don't need to feel guilty about putting fat on something because it's good fat. You got it from the right place, and you need to give yourself credit for that.
You just touched on something that I want to kind of come back to. It's a powerful thing, is why psychologically do we feel like we need to reward ourselves with a poison?
Right.
And where did that even come from?
Yeah, it's a very bizarre thing, but if you watch the commercials, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of the psychology of marketing, when I worked as a consultant with Big Food, I really saw how the food industry has dehumanized their own consumers. In the same way that they dehumanized animals in factory farms. I mean, they see those as units, or as an amount of breasts or thighs or whatever. They don't see them as holistic things. Same thing happened with consumers, because they're, and it's not some big conspiracy. It's just something that's blatantly obvious. Like big companies like PepsiCo or chemical companies, they're concerned with their bottom line and their quarterly profits. And those are the things that are driving what is in their food, where their food is distributed, where it's sourced from, which corners they're cutting. And somewhere along the line, especially starting in the 70s, without knowing it, the eggs that we were eating changed, and the wheat that we were eating changed, and the oils, and pretty much everything in our food started coming from this draconian horror movie. It's almost like you look back at some of the stuff that came out in the 70s when it started to get bad, and like Soylent Green and like other crazy movies that are totally fringe about this dystopian future have come true. It's just when you're in the middle of it and you're eating a hamburger, you don't realize that it came straight out of a horror movie where this poor animal had never the opportunity to move its legs, or it was, just ballooning full of illness and pumped with antibiotics and hormones to try to keep this poor thing alive, or fed with cement kiln dust to fatten it 30% more because the industry knows that that's what works. It's so bizarre, and it's something that's so easy to overlook because it's so gross. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that natural raspberry flavoring might come out of the anus of a beaver. You don't want to even consider that could be the case. But it's
I'm
true.
a little nauseated right now.
So that's why you need to get away from that food, the draconian world, because now we're seeing more and more, and this is the promise of it all. As paleo, gluten-free, this healthy, slow food movement becomes fashionable and starts appearing in every Costco, it's not necessarily a bad thing that people are doing it for reasons that might not have to do with their own health or whatever. If people are jumping on the bandwagon and buying food from a land that needs to be organic, that needs to be healthy and kind of an organism of its own, compared to an industrial monocrop that loses money for the farmers who basically just drive tractors. I mean, you can buy more and more from that organic world. There's organic in Walmart now, and voting with your dollar that way is the most powerful thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for your kids, because the people who are going to get screwed over by, say the draconian horror movie food that comes straight out of most factory farms, the way that they're going to win is if we keep buying their food. So you have to do the opposite and kind of suck it up. You have to look harder. You need to think before every morsel crosses your lips, wherever you are. I still get burned sometimes, but it's the best thing you could ever do for your health is knowing exactly where your food comes from.
There's another element to this, and going into your backstory, being a good old New Hampshire boy coming from farming families and stuff like that. You had mentioned to me that a lot of the areas around which you grew up have become ghost towns, and all the jobs dried up, and it's just all depressing and nasty. And part of your tales about your travels through America is those stories and how so many of these communities have basically Walmart showed up or some industry dried up, and it's just desolate where there used to be life. And so the promise of a local agrarian base and kind of this resurgence of the kind of pioneering spirit of people just growing food and selling natural food to their neighbors and all that. What do you see there in the future and promise? Because it's not just good for us, it's good for the country, it's good for so many things.
I know I've shared this with you a few times, but like especially when you spend time in the arteries of America, the shipping lanes, whether it's on the water or on the highway, I mean, it's absurd. Like, for example, Allison's folks live on a grapefruit orchard, which is surrounded by all sorts of citrus. They have tangerines, tangelos, and lemons, limes, grapefruit, oranges. They have pretty much everything there. And if you go into the store, even if you go into the local Whole Foods, most of, if not all, of the citrus is sourced from like somewhere else, usually across the world, even in a different country. And like the idea that one of the most ridiculous things about it too is that in the store, these grapefruit, for example, cost $1 if you're lucky, usually like $2-3 for a big grapefruit. But as you're driving through, like 15 seconds away from a lot of these stores, there are as many grapefruit as you can see. If you don't pick them, like it's good for the tree to pick them and eat them. And most people who like have these little orchards can't make enough money, so they just give all of their fruit away for free. But you still have all these people buying this stuff that's been shipped in a tanker across the world and gassed with ethylene gas to make it appear ripe because it was picked when it was not ripe, and then all waxed up and doctored to make it look like it's not rotten. I mean, it's just, I would hope that the local movement, the slow food movement, would start to catch on, because it's just common sense and it tastes so much better. Like if you go to a good restaurant, I think people are starting to become like, being a foodie is cool again. So if you know that your grapefruit comes with a story and it comes with a particular flavor that you like because like Farmer Fran over there grew it, that's pretty awesome. And so like chase that around. It's not that hard to find, like wherever you live. There are some desolate places and you can still grow, mushrooms there. You can forage for mushrooms or like desert fruit, even in the desert, like in Arizona, there's prickly pear. There's a lot of really cool stuff that we're not even used to knowing that it exists in a lot of cases, but it's right there. Blueberries, apples, we have wild strawberries and cranberries behind the house in New Hampshire. Like it's a whole adventure. So one thing I do in the book is really encourage people to go. I'm a huge outdoors guy, and I just love it. I think it offers so much, not just to adults, but to kids and families. So going out there and learning to identify different plants, whether they be herbs, like sometimes with you, Pedro, we find 2-3 different kinds of sage, and then we smell it and we kind of like talk about it. And it's a whole different world that so many of us are kind of losing sight of, that I think will save us in a lot of ways. That's if we're looking ahead 10, 20 years, it needs to be that passion that saves it.
This is really good. And I want to ask you about some of your recipes because I love your recipes most of all. But first, I want to ask you if you've seen the latest lip sync contest with Jimmy Fallon and Will Ferrell, where Will Ferrell does Beyonce Drunk in Love. It's so good.
I have not seen that.
So I recommend it. And after Will Ferrell finishes his Drunk in Love, I mean, he does an incredible Beyonce. Jimmy Fallon says, "You can't unsee that." And I'm still a little bit stuck on the beaver anus. I just wanted to say I can't unsee that. But going to your recipes, I'm really excited because I'm doing your curried. Here, let me get my glasses here. This is what I'm prepping today: curried chicken and onions with butter fried parsnips. And one thing I love about your recipes, Abel, is that you are a mother's best friend because you've got the prep day and then you have the feast day.
Yeah.
And I love that. So tell me a little bit more about that because I feel like you were reading my mind when you read this book.
Well, I wanted it to be a deceptively simple book, and it's really hard and complicated to make something simple. Even just like how recipes are organized is so often really confusing, and you're like looking up and down and over here, and so you miss an ingredient and totally screw it up. That happens all the time. That's one of the biggest reasons that I never liked baking, is because it's so confusing. It should be really easy, right? It's like following a recipe should be very straightforward, but a lot of them just aren't written with like the people who are reading them in mind. So we tried to do the opposite, and we found like so many different ways of looking at food. And one of the things that we do as part of our daily practice is usually undereat during the day, or eat raw foods, or eat very light type foods, and then in the evening we have a big feast. And we don't have time to cook every night, so crock pots are our best friend, and so is like a quick little skillet meal or something like that. But a lot of the time we'll make food in advance, so we'll have like a prep day. A lot of times on Sundays we'll make big entrees. We'll get all of the bones together for a bone broth and some roasted marrow. We had that last night. And then we shop and we make sure we have everything we need for the week. And we have this prep day. And then for the rest of the week, we're having feasts based on that one little prep thing. So the way that we set it up is we wanted to say, like, you don't have to cook every night. In fact, you can cook once a week if you want to. And you just kind of put those prep days together. And that way you have almost like a healthy version of the microwave dinner. We don't encourage people to use a microwave, but in the sense that you can just reheat something that's already pre-cooked, pre-seasoned, ready to go if you only have 5 or 10 minutes to feed yourself and your family. That's what we do ourselves, and because we found that that's the best use of our time and energy. So we figured, there isn't really anything better than sharing what you think is best in your own life and what you do every day. So I wanted the book to be that, and that's really, it's funny, but most people don't, most books aren't written that way.
They're not. Yeah, we're in desperate need. Like, I didn't know I needed it so badly until I saw it in your book.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? So totally. I hope that my book does that to people. I tried to write it where it's the one that you read and it's just like, oh man, that's kind of cool. You give it away to a friend, or it can kind of like be its own thing that can, there's something so magical about it, a book, I think, like a hardcover book that has a smell and a feel. And we've been living in this internet world where it's so ethereal. And I know people are listening, but sometimes it's hard to realize that until you meet them. Similar thing with ebooks and that sort of thing. So having like a cookbook that's formidable is really cool. Mm-hmm. I'm excited about it.
I've already stained the hell out of the book you gave me. So
there's a stain too.
Yeah, there's all kinds of like
that's
pumpkin
point,
and stuff on
it's
it. Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Smell like pumpkin pie.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an encyclopedia of all the ingredients built in. There's another through line in there, and we're running out of time. But I just, there's something you mentioned that's really important. Is you use the word "we" a lot, and there's this powerful communion that you have with Allison in your prep day and the quality time you spend.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I've watched you guys, and when we've joined you guys on days where it's just like we just cook together and you're hanging out in the kitchen and you're having a good time, and it really kind of starts to redefine the time you spend with your family to make it productive towards the food you eat all week. And that's something that you've become very good at, and I've noticed that because you might not have time to hang out with Honey all the time.
Right.
But when you do something positive that contributes to your family and your health and all of it, and that's a really cool piece, an undercurrent that I just wanted to make sure was highlighted here.
Thank you. I tried to see the things that were gifts in my own life that I was taught. None of this was my idea. All the good things that I do, the habits that I learned, came from people who have intentionally put that into their own lives, and I've been fortunate enough to meet or be related to or marry into, whatever, And so I've tried to look for that, and there's just something so special about cooking as a family and valuing that time, instead of it being an area of stress where, I have to cook all this stuff and get it ready. It's like, no, like, take the time. Like, what are you doing tonight? What are you rushing off to tonight? Nothing good happens after 9 p.m. anyway, right? Like, are you watching TV? Are you checking your phone? Are you doing more work? Like, relax, be with your family. And cooking, like, we had our own little rituals that we followed growing up that really mean so much to me, and they sound corny to anyone else because it doesn't, it's random. But every Saturday night we got like 2.5 channels growing up in New Hampshire, and every time we wanted to change it, Dad had to climb up on the roof and turn the thing around. So on channel 13, that was one of the channels we got halfway, so it was like all snowy. But every Saturday night, Star Trek: The Next Generation came on, and as a family, it was like a big family date that we all looked forward to, even though we didn't even care about the show. But we made pizza together. We always just like got our fingers in the dough, and we learned about how yeast works, and we look forward to making our own pizzas every week. And even though that's one of the worst foods you can eat, in terms of like how you think about food, that's one of the best things that ever happened to me. Family
time around food, loved ones, and just kind of loving food again. Man, Abel, this is great. Sarah and I love you. It's obvious, and now that you all have listened, you understand why everyone loves Abel. How do we get your book into the hands of everyone listening right now?
Yeah, so it's called The Wild Diet, and it's available where books are sold. But the best place to go is wilddietbook.com, because we're doing a bunch of cool giveaways. We just gave away a drone, actually one of the drones that we have. And we're giving away like smart watches and cooking gear and survival gear and other cool stuff. So it's wilddietbook.com, and it's on sale April 7th. So by the time you listen to this, it's probably already ready for you.
Yay. Thank you, Abel. I'm so happy about this book and so happy to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for cooking up the recipes.
Yeah.
Love you, man. Send our love to Allison.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you guys. So good to see you.
Thank you, guys. Dr. Pedram Shojai, Dr. Sarah Gottfried here with Abel James, The Health Bridge. And once you guys have gotten the book and tried out the recipes, let us know what you think. We really want to hear back from you guys.
Thanks, everyone.